Today we're going to talk about the cost of starting a medical billing business. Spoiler alert, there is not going to be an exact figure in this video, but I am definitely going to give you all the things that you will need to start your medical billing business and the cost of how much they might be. My name is Tamika. I'm a certified professional biller and a certified professional practice manager. I do remote one-on-ones with individuals who are interested in starting a medical billing business, and they usually ask the question, how much is it going to take to start the business, if they haven't already started it. So I'm going to talk about first the basics, I guess, of starting a business. What does it mean to start the business? So to legally start a business, you will need a business license or for your business to be registered in your state. As for me, I live in the US Virgin Islands, so I needed a business license. If you live somewhere else, you might need just your business to be registered, or that's what would be what they call it, that you need your business to be registered. So you might need some permits, you might need other things. But as for me, I spent $130 for my business license. That is what I needed to get to start my business. Now let me reverse a little bit, because before that, I needed to decide on the structure of my business. The structure meaning, did I want it to be a sole proprietor? Did I want it to be a LLC, a corporation, a partnership? What was the structure of my business? And I decided that I wanted it to be an LLC. So where I live, it is $300 to start an LLC. So that is $430. Now I also have a doing business as name. So the name of my LLC and the name of my actual business are not the same. So I had to pay for that as well. And I think at the time it was $25 a year. Currently it is $50 a year. So let's say $25 a year, because when I started, that's what it was. So that would be $25 added to that. I spent $455 to start my medical billing business. Now you might be like, okay, that's a decent amount, but let me continue on, because if you want to start your medical billing business and be productive, you will definitely need some more things in order for you to say, I am a medical billing business owner. So technically with the 3 things, and one of them is actually optional. Well, 2 of them can be optional depending on your business structure. Now I do recommend that you at least be a LLC, but you do not have to be. You can be a sole proprietor. That's up to you and your accountant, your attorney, whoever is deciding with you what is your legal structure. But I would say at least an LLC. So that may or may not be optional for you. For me, it was requirement because I did not want to be a sole proprietor. Now, after doing all of that, you can legally say, I have a business. But what are you going to do in this business? How are you going to work this business? You will need more stuff. So we're going to go into a couple of sections, and I'm going to tell you about the additional things that you will need. The first and foremost, especially if you're working remotely from home, so let me say that if you are not working remote from home and you maybe want to have an actual physical business, please keep that in mind, because that will be an additional cost. The cost that I am covering in today's video is going to be if you are working remote from home as a medical billing business owner. So the first thing you're going to need is a computer. And the computer can be a laptop or a desktop. Now, nowadays, I would recommend that you use a laptop because it's more convenient, it's mobile, and if you're working remotely, you may want to work in different areas, and so having a laptop is a good idea. However, if you have a desktop, then you can use that. Now, do you have to get a brand new laptop? That all depends. So it depends on several things. Most of us have laptops already. Most of us have family laptops, or laptops that we use regularly. And although I would tell you that you can use that laptop, because you can definitely do that, I would also tell you to make sure that the laptop that you use is not one that is used by everybody, and not one that you use for recreational pleasure. If you're going on Facebook, if you're going on the social media sites, if you're downloading all type of stuff, I would not recommend using that laptop as your billing business laptop, because you can get your laptop infected. If you're doing all type of stuff and you have people's personal information on your laptop, or the software that you're using on the laptop, that can be a problem. So I would not recommend that you use the laptop that you use for your personal everyday use as your medical billing business laptop. So what I think you need to do is get a separate laptop. Now, as far as the price of the laptop, there are so many computers out there. So you can probably get a really good computer for, $500 maybe, but it all depends on what you want on the computer and where you're buying it from, where you live as far as shipping, all of those things. So I'm going to say an average of, $500 to maybe $700 would be the price of getting a new laptop for your business. You will need a printer. So printers nowadays are not that expensive. Before, they used to really be expensive, but I don't think you will be using it really often. Now again, that all depends, because depending on the provider that you work for, it may require you to use the printer more often. So you might have to get a printer that costs more money so that it can handle the load. But for the most part, you can probably get a printer that is a printer, a copier, a scanner, all in one. And that can range probably around $100 to $150. You will also need a shredder. So because you are printing out, writing, on forms that have PHI, protected health information, on it, you want to make sure that when you need to discard them, you are shredding them. You're not just throwing them in the garbage. So you can get a pretty decent shredder for, let's say, around $50. Again, all of these are just averages, because sometimes you can find shredders that are cheaper, sometimes they might be more expensive. It depends on the features and what you are using them for. So just always keep that in mind, but that would definitely be an additional cost. Now, as far as protection and security on your computer, I would always recommend antiviruses, VPNs, malware, different things like that that will help protect your computer. I use Avast, I think that's what it's called, but there are so many out there. I think McAfee, just a lot of different ones. So you can choose to see which one has the best cost for what you need. I have a lot of electronics in my house, as most of us do. So you might want one where it covers a lot of different electronics. I think the plan that I have with Avast covers 5 electronics. So yearly, I pay for this. Is usually a yearly fee. And as far as cost, I believe it's around $60 or $70. So that is something that is very important. Again, if you're going on the internet, which most likely you will when it comes to looking up payers' information, if you need to log into the software, you will be going on the internet. And anytime you go on the internet, there is a possibility that something can infect your computer, and you need to have that protection. You also need to have a firewall if you're using like a network or something. And I think in general, if you're using wireless internet and stuff, you should have a firewall. So that may be something that's already on your computer, or something that comes with the antivirus software that you purchase. I mentioned the internet. So you will be using the internet even if the software that you're logging into is not on the internet. So let's say that you are actually using a software that's installed on your computer. Then you will probably have to go on the internet to, look up payer sites and look up information, and, all of those things. You will most likely check your email. All of those things you will most likely need the internet for. So the internet is something that you may probably already have in your house. I'm guessing somewhere in your house there's some internet, because you have some type of streaming system or, something going on. However, you may want to upgrade that internet service, because for the most part, when we use the internet in our homes just to stream and do all of those things, we can get a basic package. Now, a basic package where I live is like $50. But I made sure to upgrade to the next one up, because I wanted to make sure that my internet is, fast and reliable, because I want to be able to do my work when I need to do my work. So I upgraded, and then right now I'm paying, I think it's $87 for internet monthly. You don't have to upgrade. It all depends on what services you are using for your internet. So you will determine which package you need. But let's say your internet is between $45 and $80. You'll also need a business email. So whether you use Google Suites or Microsoft Office or any other email provider, you will want to make sure that it is a business email, meaning that your domain name is at the end of that email. So when you see something like Tamika at billingservices.com, where you see billing services and not Yahoo, not Gmail, not any of those, you see like a name, that is a business or a domain name. And so it would be best, or I would recommend, that you use that instead of medicalbilling@gmail.com email. You want an email that is HIPAA compliant. You want an email that is more secure. You don't want to just use those regular email services. So most likely you will be charged for that. That won't be free, and that's something that you would have to pay for. Now, I have Microsoft Office, and within the Office suite, I have email, I have like all of the softwares as far as Excel, my Word, PowerPoint, all of those things, which I have them online, and then I also have them where I can download them to the computer that I'm using. I have Teams, so that is very helpful for me when I'm doing monthly meetings with my providers, and their share file, I think it's called, where I can have, you know, important documents that I want to be secure to be uploaded to this file, and we can share amongst each other. So I have Microsoft Office. I love it. I've had it for probably like 4 years or so. And I pay at this moment $13.13. I used to pay $12.50 or 60 cents, but they increased, and I still think it's for a very good price. So I'm going to continue to use it. You will also need a business fax. Now, sometimes you will be able to get a fax through your printer. So some of the printers have the all-in-ones, which include fax in that. I prefer to get an e-fax, and so I use SR fax, and you want a fax that is HIPAA compliant, and the fax that I use is around, I think it's $10.95. That also went up because when I first started out, it was, I think, $7.95. So it went up a little bit, but again, I think it is a good price. Now, I don't use faxes very often, but there are times, which just recently I had to fax some information to a payer, and so I do have a fax just to have on board just in case I need it. So I'm glad that it's not too expensive because I don't use it all the time. And then of course you will need supplies. So you need paper, you need pens, you need ink, like you need certain supplies that you will be using throughout your everyday. All of these things cost money. Again, you don't have to get the most expensive of these items. You can look around, check around, see what works for you. And especially if you're just starting out, you don't have to spend a whole lot of money. Now, some of these things you may already have when you start the medical billing business, so you might not need to rebuy these things. You can probably use what you already have. When I started, I had a lot of these things. I mean, I had a computer because I already had a business in something else, so I just used that. I had the internet. I had, printers and shredders and supplies and paper. I was just collecting all type of stuff, so I already had those things. But if you're new to this and you don't have anything, all of these will have a cost to them. So you need to think about that when it's time to start your billing business, because just having a business license and your structure in place is not all that you're going to need. Now let's jump into the structure of your business. So you will definitely also need a contract. When you have a billing business, you're providing a billing service for a provider, you really want to have a contract in place. This is to make sure that you have a binding agreement with the provider as far as what services you're going to be providing, what things they are responsible for, what you're not going to be doing, how much they're going to pay you, when they're going to pay you, stuff about termination, all of those things. So you want to make sure that you have a contract. And this is with even the first provider that you have. Even if the first provider is a friend of yours, you want to make sure that you have a contract, because a lot of times you may just want to get a doctor or provider, and so you don't think about those things and you have a verbal agreement, and then as time goes on, things get misconstrued, and this one thought they were supposed to do that, and this one thought they were going to pay on this day, and then you have nothing in writing to say what it was supposed to be. So make sure you get a contract. I know the question is going to be, where can I get a contract? Can you send me your contract? Can I just pull one off of the internet? In my personal opinion, you need to have a contract that is done by an attorney. That is my personal opinion. That does not mean that you can't pull a contract from off of the internet, because I know there are several out there. What I would suggest though, which is also what I did, was I did look at the contracts that were online. I saw what they included, what they didn't that I think they should, and I kind of just combined those things, wrote down some notes, and then I took it to an attorney and I said, this is what I want in my contract. Can you set it up the way it's supposed to? If I'm missing anything, can you put it in there? Because I am not an attorney. If you are an attorney and you know that, or you have someone in your family that is an attorney, I would say have them look it over so that you can make sure that this agreement is binding. You can make sure that this agreement includes what you want it to include. Each billing business is going to be different. So where Your billing business may have encoding. My billing business does not. In my contract will probably state that. And so if you took a generic contract off of the internet and you just changed the name to the top, you wouldn't see in the contract that it says, oh, we do not code, or I do not code. You would not see that because now you're just using a generic contract that does not apply to you. So you want to make sure that the contract applies to you. It will probably cost you to get a contract done. Now, like I said, the way I did it, I don't think it cost me as much as it would have. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was $750 that I paid the attorney to look over my contract. Now, they did make a few corrections here and there. They, suggested stuff. So I guess all of that is factored in. And then of course it depends on the attorney. So what their fees are. And nowadays it is a lot more expensive. You will need E&O insurance, errors and omissions insurance. And I would suggest cybersecurity insurance. So both of these things can be purchased, through an insurance company, and I would suggest that you do it from the beginning, especially as soon as you start to bill for a provider. However, if I'm being totally honest, I did not start from the beginning. But just because I didn't do it doesn't mean that you have to do it. I do have it now, of course, but again, I didn't have it from the beginning. I didn't have the type of money to pay for it. Where I live, it is kind of hefty for the insurance. And so that shouldn't have been an excuse, but it was the reality of it. And so as soon as I could afford it, I did afford it and I got it done. So I would definitely suggest that you have E&O insurance and cybersecurity insurance. You should have a bookkeeping software. Now, of course, you can use Excel or Google Sheets, and all of that would probably be fine with you if you would like that. I like to use a bookkeeping software. Now, I started out using QuickBooks and I currently use Zoho. And so it helps me with making sure that I keep my money separate from my personal money, and that at the end of the year when I need to pay taxes and then when I need to review my books and see how much we brought in and how much expenses were and see where I can lower things and increase income and revenue, then I can pull the reports that I need. Again, if you're really trying to save money, you may not need these additional software, but if you do, you will probably pay for them. Now, actually, I paid for QuickBooks because it was an old QuickBooks. I think it was the Simple Start. And actually, I don't think I even paid for that. I think I got that free. It was an actual disc, so you can know how long ago it was. And then afterwards, I decided to upgrade to Zoho, and Zoho is actually free as well. So there are some free options out there. I don't have a lot of transactions that go on throughout the month, and so it works for me. I don't have payroll, that stuff, so it works for me. Also, you will need to open a bank account. Now, a bank account doesn't cost you anything per se, but some banks require that you put in a certain amount of money to get the account started, and then they may require that you pay a monthly fee for something. I don't know if it's just my bank, and I probably need to change banks, but my bank charges $10 a month if I want to be able to access my account online because I'm a business account. So again, if it's $10 a month, you will need to be paying that monthly. And then you can have an accountant. So you might have an accountant where you just pay them for different services that you do, or you may pay them a retainer. The accountant that I usually use her mainly for my taxes, to do my taxes. And of course I have to pay her for that. But throughout the year, I'm usually dealing with the bookkeeping. If I have a question here or there, she doesn't charge me to answer questions, but some accountants may. So you may need to factor in getting an accountant. That may be an additional cost. And so right now I'm going to go over some optional costs that you probably should have, and it's optional, I'm saying, but and of course if you're just starting a medical billing business, sometimes you can't do all of these things. So I kind of put them in the optional section because they may come a little bit later, but they are still just as important. And the first one is a marketing budget to include your website, your domain name, ads, all of that stuff. I get the question a lot, do I need a website? And I would say, yes, a website would definitely be helpful. It doesn't have to be an expensive website. It doesn't have to be multiple pages, I don't think, in my opinion. But I do think you should have a website. You may also want to get business cards. I know there are, the electronic business cards. I know there are, other ways that you can do it. A lot of people don't even have business cards anymore. So that might not be an option for you, but business cards may be an option for you. And you might want to do marketing as far as, sending out flyers or pamphlets or doing ads on social media. You might want to do that, and that is going to cost you as well. So having a budget for your marketing so that you can then get clients, very helpful. For me, I did not do that. And I kind of didn't have to do that because I was already in the medical billing field. I already had a few clients, or a couple or clients at the time. And so I just kind of converted those clients from, me being the 1099 contractor into my business. And then I got a lot of my clients, like 99% of my clients, from word of mouth. So I didn't even really market, I didn't really do all the sending out the ads and pamphlets. And I did have business cards. I do have a website, of which with the website, you will also need to buy a domain name along with the website hosting platform that you're using. So you need to do all of that as well, which will have a cost to it. Now, software. Software is a big thing that people ask. And again, this is optional. This is optional because it depends on what you are going to do. Now, if you want to be the one to have the software, you're going to be the one to purchase a software and then have the providers use that software, it's going to cost you. Whether or not you pass that cost on to the provider is totally up to you, but initially it is going to cost you. So as far as what I do, I use the provider software. So I don't pay for the software or the clearinghouse. That is something that the provider does. Then you have the code books. So depending on if you are coding for the providers as well, you may want to have your code books regularly, annually, every time they come out, keep them up to date and have them. As for me, I don't code for the providers, so I don't necessarily need my books annually. I may, buy books every other year, and it is most likely the ebooks through AAPC or through, another vendor. But I don't necessarily buy every year. But again, it depends on the services that you are offering. So that can be another couple $100 because we know each book is like $100 and something. If you need all 3 books, meaning the ICD-10, the CPT, the HCPCS books, that's a good 3 and change. So you have to keep that in mind as well. Now, these are some of the basic costs that you will have when starting a medical billing business remotely from home. If you're thinking about having a physical location, there will most likely be additional costs to this, including rent, lights, all of those other things. I'm sure I may be missing a few, but I think I got the majority of them. If I missed some, please make sure you leave it in the comments below, and I will see you again in my next video.